Today on The African Story.
I examine Nigeria in the Fourth Republic. What does democracy look like? Why is secession so widely condemned in Nigeria? Is it really an abomination as we've been taught to believe? I cite examples as I examine the idea of a separation. Then I speak with Stephen Walker, aka Ellu P Boy, a representation of the hope that many saw on February 25, 2023, but would later be dashed. Finally, I give my take on why Nigeria is still not truly free. And I share my observations on the bystander effect, an effect that could very easily be a threat to the African democracy as a whole. What really happens when we keep quiet and do nothing?
I am Miss Giving You What You Need, Gloria Ayo, and this is The African Story. Now let's take a quick dive into memory lane, shall we? So in 1999, after maximum dictator Sani Abacha mysteriously died, the military gave Nigeria a parting gift in the form of a democracy and what is known as the Fourth Republic. The same military gave us the 1999 Constitution, a constitution which is still problematic today because to a large extent, it mimics the constitution of an authoritarian government. For instance, the Nigerian Constitution does not allow for restructuring of Nigeria's resources, and that's an issue that makes some regions feel shortchanged and not truly free.
This constitution is no constitution for the benefit of the people. It must be restructured.
But anyway, now to Nigerian elections in the Fourth Republic. It is no longer news that most of Nigeria's elections since 1999 have been marred by suspicions of rigging, the biggest one of them being the 2023 elections.
I mean, so where do things stand right now? As you say, the voting has resumed. There's also a lot of controversy over the electronic voting system, which has become nationwide for this particular election.
Chaos at a polling booth in Lagos as shots were fired in the air on Saturday afternoon. People screamed and scattered, searching for cover as armed men jumped out of a car in Nigeria's commercial hub. They grabbed ballot boxes, leaving papers strewn across the road, and voters angry.
Now, there was a third force known as Peter Obi, and what we now know as the Obidient Movement. Now, contrary to what some may think, the Obidient Movement was not about an ethnic group or even an individual. It is, as my father aptly put it, a fight for the soul of Nigeria. Nigerians had longed for a third force since our so-called democracy didn't seem to serve us well under the leadership of the PDP and the APC.
I am giving a red card to both PDP and APC. And I said, my red card is to say the governance failure must end.
As we speak, more than half of Nigerians live in multidimensional poverty. Has the lack of resources ever been the reason? No. Now, Obi decided to run on the ticket of the Labour Party. And many celebrated because of his track record when he was governor of Anambra State. Now, interestingly, there have been a lot of propaganda to dispute these facts. But most, if not all of honest residents of Anambra will back these facts up. Obi did do a whole lot of work in Anambra State. Now, throughout his campaign, there were no dole-outs given, no inducements. I mean, if you've seen any, please cite your reputable source. I'm not trying to go by propaganda here. See, Nigerians were ready for this breath of fresh air. And they had even expressed a desperate desire to move on from the APC government, especially after the EndSARS tragedy of 2020. And FYI, till date, nobody has been held accountable for the tragic loss of lives. It's just been business as usual. Throughout his campaign posters were destroyed. Beyond that, permanent voters' cards of people who seemed to be of Igbo extraction mysteriously disappeared. President Muhammadu Buhari and the INEC chairman, Mahmood Yakubu, promised a free and fair election several times. Yakubu even assured Nigerians of a live transmission of the results. He introduced BVAS and IREV. But miraculously, the presidential elections could not be transmitted in real time. There were photos and videos showing a clear tampering of votes. Until date, nobody has been arrested. People were brazenly threatened not to vote for the Labour Party. Some were injured, some were killed, yet nobody has been apprehended. And you say that Nigeria is truly free?
Please, if you don't want to vote for us, please sit down for
Who put the thugs up to these tasks? The answer is obvious to everybody. I mean, come on. It's no longer news that as men and women slept at 4 a.m., the INEC chairman announced the results, declaring Bola Ahmed Tinubu president-elect. That is the first time in the history of Nigeria that anything like that would ever happen at that time. Results were always announced during broad daylight, but for some reason, the INEC chairman decided not to be the neutral umpire that we had all hoped for. Ironically, supporters of the Labour Party thought they were onto the government and thought, maybe we can curb electoral malpractices during the gubernatorial elections. But this time, it was even worse, and this was actually throughout Nigeria. I strongly condemn any tribe being attacked, and I will never condone looking away when a preferred candidate's surrogates are doing the wrong thing and then condemn other parties. Dare I say that this last election shows that tribalism was sneaked in through the back door, because the acceptance that Obi had was widely accepted by many, regardless of ethnicity. The hatred that the 2023 election was wiping away somehow resurfaced. Unity was a threat, and propaganda had to be created to thwart it. But we forget that in 1999, only 2 candidates ran in Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo and Olufalaye, and they were of Yoruba extraction. Guess what? The main debate then, from what I remember, was Obasanjo's military background. Ethnicity was not at the forefront because the whole country tolerated it, and the election was peaceful. Majority of Nigerians from every region, remember, had also supported MKO Abiola, another man of Yoruba extraction, in 1993. That said, do you know the power of propaganda? It was the same power that turned the Hutus against the Tutsis and the Germans against the Jews. And we know the results, genocides that killed millions of people, including children. May I remind you that the ethnic cleansing we've read about throughout history started just like this. May I remind you that if you condemn perpetrators of evil, but you hate people of other ethnic groups and religion, you will be viewed the exact same way by posterity. It always only begins in a light-hearted, perhaps humorous way. That's how it starts. That's how it begins. Now to Gbadebo Road Viver, a strong contender for Lagos State. So propaganda started flying about that Gbadebo, a man whose father is from Lagos, was not Lagosian enough. Why? Because his mother is Igbo. Is Nigeria now a matrilineal society? Bola Tinubu and Sanwo-Olu are not even from Lagos. Yet, how are they considered more Lagosian than Gbadebo? See, once again, tribalism was weaponized and the gubernatorial election was filled with violence and hatred. Of course, Sanwo-Olu was declared winner. No surprise there. And to justify all the electoral malpractices, the Igbos were told that it served them right. And then some misguided Yorubas and Igbos found the election as a way to hold on to their ethnicity and cultures. Nigeria, I thought we'd risen past this. Now, despite all the hurt and traumas from the past, we're still here. Yet we claim to be free. How is an election free if people are not allowed to vote without threats and violence? How is an election fair if, for instance, the president of the country votes and publicly displays his votes? You still claim that Nigeria is truly free? How? So now, let's even, for the sake of argument, assume that the Igbos have done all that they've been accused of doing. Is how they've been treated the best way to correct this? I'll use Donald Trump as an example. Donald ran for presidency of the United States. As controversial as he may have seemed, those who were for him proved it the first time he ran, and we saw him win. Those who were against him exercised their franchise, and we saw Biden win the second time. That's exactly how it works. That's what true democracy does. Now, you may ask me what effrontery I have to compare the United States with Nigeria. But if we cannot compare America with Nigeria, then we're not practicing the American system of democracy that we chose to adopt. You use your right to vote to decide who you want, but you don't deprive people of their own rights to decide who they want to lead them. That's not how you teach people a lesson. You teach people a lesson by exercising your franchise. And in case you're not aware of how a democracy works, the majority votes for who they want. And if you don't like the performance, you simply come back a couple of years later, 4 years later in this case, and you vote the person, you vote somebody else in. That is true freedom. Sadly, the Nigerian government has conditioned its citizens to embrace criminality, and that displays itself and definitely displayed itself throughout the 2023 elections. You may also argue that democracy does not truly work in Africa, but as polyethnic and multiracial as Mauritius is, that country has been known to be able to practice true democracy, and somehow it's been able to balance power effectively.
Africa is known for its dictators, corruption, and constant wars, but Mauritius seems to be the exception. That's because in The Economist's latest intelligence unit report, the country came in as the #1 democracy in Africa.
So what stops Nigeria from attaining true freedom? Peter Obi was dismissively told to go to court to dispute the results of the presidential elections. As of the time of this recording, despite the court granting Obi the right to inspect the BVAS machine, he has not been allowed that access. But some keep insisting that the election was free and fair. Poor BVAS and IREV. They worked as they were designed to, but see, those who need work are the human beings behind those machines. Yet somehow we accept this abuse of freedom because we've become so used to this culture of oppression since colonization. Tragic. And now when the ethnic tension seems to simmer, they throw in religion. So I ask you again, is Nigeria truly free? On one hand, the Igbos feel marginalized. On the other hand, the topic of secession is always taboo. But let's talk about it. Nigerian history has erroneously demonized this idea of a secession. While secession may not be backed by the Nigerian constitution, it is not out of place for this idea to be proposed. I'm not an advocate of dwelling on the horrible effects of colonization, but we seem to forget that the British colonizers forced the geographical expression now known as Nigeria when they forced people from different ethnic groups that had no business living together to coexist. So what happens when there are strained ethnic relations? What do? It was these same strained ethnic relations that led to the separation of Kosovo from Serbia in 2008. And how about Scotland and the 2014 Independence Referendum Act? The 45% who voted in favor of Scotland being independent of the United Kingdom were not brutally demonized for their request. People must feel like they're part of a union, otherwise that country is not truly free. The mere idea of self-determination in Nigeria only further deepened ethnic tensions. But nobody should feel captured in their own country. Now, I'm not advocating for a division of Nigeria, but the leaders should make the country such that people are not forced to be a part of the country. What is the purpose of a big nation if it's filled with unhappy people? That country would have been big for nothing. The reason some people didn't want this government to begin with was because they didn't want Nigeria to reduce to what it's been reduced to. Do you know how it feels to see joy and hope in people's faces and for that to be snatched away overnight? I speak with a man who went viral during the election for his passionate, creative, and heartfelt chant for the Labour Party.
Obi 78, 79, Obi 88, Obi.
This interview was recorded on May 5, 2023, the same day he released his very catchy upbeat song, We Are Ready.
We are ready to liberate our motherland.
If you aren't familiar with him already, allow me to introduce the incredible Stephen Mwaka, also known as the Ellu P guy. It all began when a man, Kachi, caught Stephen on camera during the now famous Ellu P chant. Stephen had no clue the video was being recorded, nor did he ever have it in mind that he would become a viral sensation. Kachi recorded you
Without your knowledge?
Well, there were like two guys standing. That they are the guy that asked, and I was like, what is happening? He said, okay, that he said he's coming with a proof. So like Thursday morning, he came with the proof, and I saw so many videos. Stephen Walker was a nobody. And God just lifted me up from anywhere, from nobody that I don't even know, I've not seen in my eyes. And lift me up. The whole wide world is now talking about Ellu P.
As I explained previously, Stephen had just released his song We Are Ready. And even though a lot of us were introduced to him through his famous Ellu P chant, I needed him to clear the air on whether he had been an aspiring singer previously.
This is a very busy time for you because the record just dropped. Everybody's talking about it. Are you a singer? What's the deal?
Okay.
Are you into music?
You see, let me be sincere. I love music. My new song just dropped today, and everybody was like telling me that, Omo, you are talented. You are talented. I just told them that it's not by my making, it's only God. It's out of the love I have for music and the love I have for people made me vibe that day. Understand? So I don't even know that it will go this viral. So it's out of love I have for music. If you bring your right up, I can vibe on it. That's me for you. I will not call myself a musician.
Like all obedience, I'm sure you were heartbroken with the way the election went. Your passion, which we all saw go viral, was actually reflective of the hope that a whole lot of people had in Peter Obi. And even after the hope was dashed, that video, that viral moment still was a reminder of that connection that a lot of people had with the hope for Peter Obi. And if anything, it still makes some people feel like, hey, maybe there is hope. Do you feel pressured to keep giving people hope, to keep igniting the hope that people once had?
Majority do not understand that man called Peter Obi. He doesn't give up easily. He's a man that whenever he said something, he will fulfill his promise. He promised the Obidient family that Peter Obi believed that we won the election. And he promised us that he will bring back our mandate. My dear, I still have hope that something must happen.
Stephen stood firmly in his faith in Peter Obi and was certain that his mandate will be restored. But I had to ask questions to see how certain he was in spite of the ethnic tensions that had been heightened in Nigeria.
You do know that there are a lot of ethnic divisions, there are a lot of religious divisions. Do you think that perhaps you mentioned Enugu, do you think that perhaps being in the East gives you a different experience?
Hausa and Yoruba. I'm getting maximum love from both of them, honestly. The problem of Nigeria now, it only requires unity. It's my club, Kegite Club, we say that unity in diversity, a very strong bond that we hold family, unity in diversity. Understand? So without unity, without the youths coming together to fight this government, we are doing nothing. This fight now is for the youths alone, not for our mothers, because their time have passed. Now we are fighting for our own future.
So what is your niche? What are you going to be putting out? Are you going to be talking about the Obidient Movement? Are you going to be talking about societal issues? Are you going to be trying to inspire people? Because I've seen you do a little bit of everything.
Talking about Obidient family, yes. Taking skits, yes. Talking about our leaders of tomorrow or the politics of today, yes, I will be saying it. Because I believe that it's politics that brought me out of the country.
Go back to Peter Obi very quickly. You're a resident of Enugu and Imo states, but you're originally from Agwata and Anambra, right?
Yes.
Right, okay. Now, some people have come out to say, Peter Obi's critics, they've come out to say, he didn't do anything in Anambra, what did he do? You are an indigene of Anambra. Can you please, as objectively as you can, clear the air on that?
Education in Anambra State was the very least after Indigene. Peter Obi took us to the first in the whole 36 states. I so much have confidence and believe that he's competent enough to rule Nigeria. Do
you have any university in mind that you would like to go to?
Anywhere.
And
Everywhere.
what has been the reason you haven't gone?
It's fund.
Okay.
It's fund. It's fund that stops me. So that's it.
Okay.
But I still want to go to school.
And that's a beautiful thing to aspire to do.
And I still want to go to school.
I'm sure it will happen soon.
I want to tell the whole world that this guy called Ellu P, I just came out from a very poor background family. Understand? And it's just few from my family finished university.
Ironically, the man who has inspired millions still has wishes he hopes to see fulfilled soon. Stephen clearly has been inspired by Peter Obi, a man who has inspired him in so many ways. There is no doubt that Stephen is a talented man, and the desire for a man who literally just got thrown into the spotlight to want to give back is commendable. The mere fact that he often gets hurt about opinions from his critics proves that he is a man who cares about humankind. In the meantime, his song, We Are Ready, is instilling hope in many Obedients who hope for Peter Obi to one day become president. On Monday, May 29, 2023, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was inaugurated as president of Nigeria. For now, many, like Stephen Walker, will keep their faith in the judiciary. Love what you see? Do you want to see more? Then follow me on all social media platforms right now.
If you win fair and square, nobody will dispute it. But the people do need to be convinced that you won. Even if you turn Nigeria into China, Dubai, or even the Garden of Eden, if we're not convinced that you won, you will suffer illegitimacy. And I'm not only referring to those in Nigeria. What impression have you given people throughout Africa and the world at large? You do know that there are people who aren't clouded by bias because they're not Nigerian. And these people on the outside looking in will very easily condemn the way INEC handled the 2023 elections. But we Nigerians, we look away in the name of preserving culture and traditions while trampling on people's rights. Now, we keep calling ourselves the giants of Africa, but we're not leading as giants by example. We're only leading by word of mouth. And do you know the real tragedy? No matter how you try to explain this, those who refuse to get it will never get it. Stockholm Syndrome at its finest. So again, I ask you, when will Nigeria be truly free? We've all seen the transformation of the political atmosphere. Our democracy had been threatened long before this, but this one could not even be covertly done. No finesse, no respect. Yet we see black and you want to gaslight us into thinking that it is white. Now, feel free to like who you like, but please stop telling people who are suffering that there is no suffering. Stop telling people who have been cheated and violently treated that they have no right to complain. Have we ever had such a mass exodus? And to those who have chosen to be detribalized in all this, in all regions of Nigeria, thank you. And to everybody else, if only you knew the life you could truly enjoy, you may have underestimated the inestimable treasure that is Nigeria. Finally, to lovers of true democracy, please remain peaceful, but do not be silent. Do not despair. No matter what happens, you spoke up, and you should be celebrated. Despite being disenfranchised, despite being deprived of your rights to vote, you have held on. Silence in the face of injustice borders on consent or even complicity. To those of you who have been paid, I am not even mad at you. It just hurts that you refuse to see the scheme. We can't all jump on a bandwagon simply because it's the trendy thing to do. Democracy was murdered in a way Nigeria has never known in its recent history. And there will never be a justification for it. Nobody is more Nigerian than anybody simply because of an accident of birth. Ever heard of the bystander effect? Those who do nothing because it isn't popular to do anything suffer the consequences. Because before you know it, the oppressor sways your way of thinking. You may laugh at those fighting for your democracy now because your preferred candidate is in power. And you may feel more popular, more powerful. Some of those who were even at the forefront of the NSAS protests have suddenly been demonized. Why? Because we've all been brainwashed and divided. What changed between 2020 and now? The same democracy we were all crying for is what only some are still crying for, but alone. Some were bought over. Why? Because everybody has a price, right? And this is simply because it no longer suits your interest, or so you think. What happened to some of the Sorosoke, aka the coconut head generation? Are you suddenly afraid to speak? Why? Because it serves your interest, or have you just maybe completely given up on Nigeria? Well, let me tell you. The Sorosoke generation has fallen prey to being cheated. Obedients weren't the only ones cheated. We all were, because we've been robbed of true freedom. You may hate those speaking truth to power now, but two things are inevitable. Posterity will forever thank them, and your hatred of them will never ever match their love for Nigeria. These are people who have absolutely nothing to lose, but are fighting for you at the risk of their lives, their mental health, and their reputation. You laugh because the intimidation and suppression seem to have favored you. My prayer for you, however, is that you won't also face this level of injustice. And if you do, maybe, just maybe, they will have enough grace and strength to fight for you too.
In the words of the great Martin Luther King Jr., whatever affects one directly affects others indirectly. The violation of the rights of any group of people is a violation of the rights of all groups of people. And if after all the voter suppression, the voter intimidation, violence, the conspicuous rigging, the unfair disenfranchisement, if you still think these things are justifiable, then maybe, just maybe, Nigeria does deserve the kind of leaders it gets. Hola, do you want more contents like this? Then I need your help. You see that subscribe button? Yeah, it's right there, right under this video. All I need is a click. With your subscription, the algorithm becomes more favorable and it helps spread the word faster, and then I get encouraged to do even more contents like this. Get it? See? And please make sure you tell everybody you know to also subscribe. I truly, truly appreciate you. Keep it locked.